Okay, back in action. Since we were talking about Jerry, I had a good picture of him as a young man. You probably seen it or gave it to my mom. Here, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, he was very handsome.
Yeah, he was a good-looking kid, huh? Mm-hmm. Go ahead and grab it.
He didn't age too well, but he was very good-looking, and he was very athletic and a wonderful musician.
See if it'll do it. That's Jerry right there when he was a young man. Got that on there. And so we talked about how you guys had separated, but Carolyn, my mom, was born in '55. During the divorce? After?
I think I got divorced when I was pregnant with her.
So you had just been divorced when she was born.
Mm-hmm.
And she was born in Salt Lake City.
Yes. Because I was RH native and I went to a specialist up there.
I've got that. So, I mean, you had to be moved to Salt Lake City Hospital because GrandJan's blood type is RH negative. And the Moab Hospital couldn't handle that kind of rare blood type.
Short. I was daddy's girl.
Yeah?
I used to daydream that my parents would divorce and I could go with my dad.
Really?
Yeah.
Why would you think where that come from?
I don't know. I just always wanted to be with my dad.
Where would you be with him at? Just wherever? Or
wherever.
At the... Okay. Yeah, I get that. I really do.
Yeah, it's true.
I guess shortly thereafter you met Bob Hawley in '56.
Yes, I met Bob. One of my girlfriends married one of his friends.
Do you remember their names?
Yes, Jerry Leeming and I can't remember his name. He was from Texas. Charles, I can't remember his last name.
That's you at their wedding.
Mm-hmm.
You met Bob.
Well, I had known Bob before. In fact, he had taken Dorothy out.
Really?
A little bit. And
okay.
I knew him as you knew everyone in Moab. Mm-hmm. Even though he was a newcomer, I knew him.
Right.
But that's the first time I had been with him. I was with him after the wedding.
Because he wasn't from Moab.
No.
Or even Utah.
No, he had gone to college in Idaho, but his mother was an invalid and his father...
We're going to get to them.
Traveled around.
Yeah, I've got some stuff on a couple of... on Bob's mom.
Yeah.
What was his occupation at the time when you met him? Do you remember what he did for work?
He had come to Moab because he and his friend were going to have a radio station there. But what he actually was a surveyor, and that's...
Right. And he made a good living doing that?
Surveying, yes, when he did that. He worked for the Utah State Road, and then he got a job in Cottonwood, Arizona. Then we were transferred to Phoenix.
So, but he must have been, from what I've learned, he got along good with Buck because they were both hunters, perhaps.
My dad really liked Bob because Bob would help him butcher.
Mm-hmm.
My dad didn't like to butcher.
There was a cool anecdote about Buck said Bob Hawley could eat a sandwich in one hand and butcher with the other.
Yes, and can I tell you another story about Bob and Buck?
Yeah.
Bob decided he was going to go on a roundup, and my dad invited him to.
A roundup.
A roundup is when you get the calves in to send them to market, and you go out in the wilderness and round up the cattle and get the calves.
Like steers. The whole lot or just certain ones?
Well, most of the steers go to market, let's face it.
Okay.
And so Bob went up in the mountains with my dad, and on the way down, a little heifer is a female, the little heifer kept running off into the brush, and Bob would get her and bring her back in. The little heifer would run off in the brush, and Bob would go get her and bring her back with the herd again. Finally, they got almost down from the mountain to the river ranch, and my dad said, "Let her go, Bob." And Bob said, "What do you mean? I've been chasing her all over the mountain." And my dad said, "Can't you read a brand? She belongs to George White."
So was he messing with him, like
Yeah.
letting him herd that one the whole time, and eventually let him in on the
That was my dad's
gag?
That was my dad's sense.
So he was letting him hassle with that cow that they shouldn't even have been messing with all the way down the mountain. Right around soon thereafter, Allison Jo was born in the new Moab Hospital, December 5th of 57. What do you remember about when she was born?
I remember being in that nice new hospital.
Because that is your and Bob's first child together that you had
Yes.
together was...
Our only child.
Right.
And that's, I think Bob began drinking when we were in Australia.
Yeah,
Quite a bit.
definitely gonna get to the Australia. There's so many things about Australia. Do you remember moving to Nevada for a short time after
Yes.
Joe was born?
Yes.
What
I
was that
did.
about?
I can't remember. He had some kind of a deal over there. He always had deals. We lived in Salt Lake for a while too. I didn't like it there. We did live in Las Vegas, and then we came back to Moab.
Okay. And then it says moved to Phoenix in 58, 59. Around then, if Joe was born December of 57,
Yes,
she must have been one
just,
or two.
just
or,
a baby.
Okay.
One.
And that's when you moved to the house on 39th in Bethany, which Kirk said the road was Lawrence.
Yes, Lawrence Road.
3849 West Lawrence. He even recalled the address.
Yeah.
Kirk must have been 5 or 6. I got from him when you, because I guess you had left, came back to the same
Yes.
house, and left and came back. Bob's parents were Edward and Bodil Hawley, right?
Right.
Bodil. That's an
Bodil.
interesting name.
I think it's a Danish name.
I guess Bob's dad Edward was a cop, but had died young.
I don't know that much about him. I really don't.
No, this is mostly from Kirk, and I think from Joe.
Joe probably knew more. I know that he moved Bob, that the mother was an invalid and he moved Bob around a lot.
And from what I gather, Ed was not the best dad to Bob.
No, I think he was mean.
I think
to
he
him.
abused him, or
Yes, he
physically abused him, or didn't
Bob's
treat him very
cousins
good.
told me that.
Really? What did they say?
They said they used to hide Bob in a closet so the father couldn't beat him.
Wow. It says Bodil was in an asylum for 3 or 4 years.
Well, there was she had, it wasn't a mental asylum, it was health. She had tuberculosis, I think.
What kind of affliction is that?
It's for the lungs.
It's the lungs, right?
Uh-huh.
Right. There's a story about how she came to live with you guys in Phoenix for a visit. Visited you guys in Phoenix, and because I don't know, maybe she didn't have anywhere to go, or was just staying for a vacation, or just to hang out. I got that. Do you remember her staying with you guys at all?
Oh, yes. She was living with a niece in California. And I don't think she got along that well with the niece. So she came to visit and she just stayed. And it was really hard having her live with us. It was very difficult.
I'm getting she was a little bit grouchy and hard to deal with
She
as a
was.
person. I've got a story about Bob threatened to leave and check himself into a hospital because she was driving him so crazy. Do you remember
I
that?
think that did happen.
I think that's from Kirk. Maybe it was from Joe. They both have good stories about Bob. But I guess eventually he didn't do that. And maybe, how did she end up getting out of there? Do you remember?
She finally, I think, I can remember we lived in Moab for a while before. The first time she did this is in Moab. And at that time, my mother and or my grandmother told her that she should not live with us because she was going to break up the marriage.
Oh, she was just...
So I think that maybe made her think about it. Then she came back to live with us and in Arizona. I don't know, she just finally went back to live with that...
In California?
With the niece again in California.
So the next thing I got is you guys moved to Trinidad in 1960, 61. Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yes.
Port of Spain?
First we lived in San Fernando, then he was transferred to Port of Spain.
Okay. What do you remember about Trinidad?
Well, we lived up on a hill, close to the ocean. The company rented a nice house for us. We had maids, and a gardener. The company that Bob worked for, which I think was American Pipe, they had agreed in the contract that each family coming over there would have a maid and a gardener.
Wow.
And
sounds kind of bourgeois, like higher end.
We as Americans did not know how to treat a maid, you know. I'd never had a maid, and the other girls I knew there hadn't either, but the English people were happy to tell us that we didn't know how to treat maids. We were too good.
You were too nice to them, or too
nice to them.
Oh, wow.
And maybe I remember the maid did go to the fish market, and to buy a chicken there, you'd have to pick out a live chicken and they would kill it for you.
Wow.
I couldn't do that. So either Bob or the maid would do it. And the maid used to go to the fish market and get fish for us.
You only had one, or did you have multiple maids?
I only had one at a time, but the first one was Agatha in Port of Spain, and then we were transferred. I liked her.
What was the name you said?
Agatha.
Agatha. Similar to Agatha, but
Agatha,
they said
Agatha.
Agatha in that country.
And she came to Port of Spain with us, but she didn't like it there, and she left to go back to Port of Spain. So then I had 2 or 3 others. We had one that Bob and I we partied quite a bit there. We were coming home late one night, and we saw her out on the street, and we thought that she was with the kids, but I guess she hadn't been staying with the kids. As soon as we'd leave, she would leave. And she got bed bugs back in her living quarters, and we had to burn everything. Can't even remember that girl's name, but the last one I had was named Dorothy, and she was wonderful. We were really good friends.
And I've got Tanner Construction as Bob's company when he was there. Does that sound right or no? It was the other one you said?
It was Tanner he worked for in Phoenix.
Okay.
The same company Dick Morley worked for. Dick Morley stayed with them and ended up a rich man. Bob didn't.
What about, there's a story about the mango stealer. Do you know about the mango stealer in Trinidad?
Yes, sir. We had a beautiful mango tree.
Just one?
Just one big mango tree in the backyard, and apparently my kids saw some guy hanging around, and this was probably when Bob and I went out, and the maid wasn't with them like she should have been. Mm-hmm. And they said that there was a mango stealer, and that Kirk had a big stick to hit him with. I don't know if that didn't ever happen, but
Kirk didn't remember it that way, but my mom and Joe remembered the mango stealer, because Joe had said there was like a perfect mango up that was at this high spot that none of the kids could get to. Oh. And she saw that guy climbing the tree going for it, and then freaked out about it because she didn't want him to get it.
I don't know. I never did see him. If there was one, I didn't see him.
They talked about in Trinidad there was a drive-in that the families would go to hang out?
There was a drive-in. It was wonderful, and
Had like a bar
the
for
adults
parents?
would sit up and watch the movie, and there would be a young man there to light our cigarettes. We were all smokers. We'd have cocktails, and our kids were down in the car. We could see the children in the cars down below in the drive-in. It was quite.
That sounded fun.
It was quite nice. I've never seen anything like it here.
Especially with the nice weather and how nice it is down there, I suppose.
It was nice, and we'd eat it there, and it was very nice.
Apparently there was a big storm, a hurricane or something while you guys were down there.
There was.
Do you remember
and
that?
Yes, I do, and I don't think it. I remember Kirk. Well, one of the first things we did, everybody said, fill the bathtub with water so you'll have water. And Joe put the cat in the bathtub full of water.
Mm.
I remember that. And the hurricane hit Tobago really hard and killed a lot of people there, but it didn't hit us too much. And I remember Kirk said, "Is that all there is to a hurricane?"
Oh, wow. Maybe you guys got lucky a little bit.
Disappointed, but I remember mainly Joe throwing the cat in the bathtub full of clean water.
Joe had a story about her and my mom, I guess right before this one or some other big storm, were out playing across, there's some canals, right? That would flood out during the raining.
It was so scary because the Neiman's were our friends there, and they had girls close to the same ages who were with my girls, and these kids all disappeared, and a big rainstorm came. We couldn't find these girls, so we went up looking for them, and we heard them, and they had, I think, hidden they had hid someplace, not in a canal because the canals were flooded.
Right.
But they had hid someplace and got away from the canals where they didn't drown. We were sure they were all drowned.
How did
But
you
they
find
were
them?
okay. We heard them. Dorothy, the mother of those other girls, and I walked up into the hills where they usually played, and we heard them
Oh, okay.
giggling or talking or something. Anyway, we heard them, and we
So
knew
did
it
the
was them.
storm happen while they were out there playing,
Yes.
or you got them before the storm?
No, the storm happened, but they found someplace to hide away from it.
Oh, wow.
They were smart.
Eventually Trinidad fizzled out. You guys moved back to Phoenix for some reason. What happened there?
Mainly what people did back then, I don't know how it is now, but if we stayed overseas 18 months, we were tax exempt.
Mm-hmm.
So most people on those jobs just stayed 18 months, so we stayed our 18 months.
Oh, you think that was it? Just that you wanted to be in that window right there, and then there was no because I'm getting.
I loved it there, but Bob got really tired of it. The guys didn't like it there that much. The work was hard, and
What were they doing?
they were laying pipeline, new sewer, I think.
Oh, okay. That is hard work.
And the crews were all natives, and they didn't know how to treat each other that well.
Each other, like the crews
Like
didn't get
crews
along?
didn't know how to treat the bosses, the white bosses, and the bosses didn't know how to treat the crews. There was just a lot of trouble and a lot of jealousy between the crews and everything.
Do you know about I guess before we go, but there's a good story about, because Bob was like a supervisor or a head
He
of
was
a
a
crew or
superintendent,
something like that?
Yeah.
And the people under him were mostly natives, right? So black guys, Trinidad people, whatever, I'm not sure what
Their
ethnicity.
mixture.
Yeah, and then so Kirk told a funny story about one of those crew members or multiple crew members not arguing but challenging Bob to like a race out in the ocean. They were gonna go, there's a pier, and they were all gonna gather at the pier, and it's like dusk, and he said that Bob took Kirk. This is Kirk's story. Bob took Kurt out there to that pier at dusk. Sun's almost going down, to go race this guy, jump off the pier, race, and come back. And I guess when they got out there and met up with the guys, Bob took his pants off and he had Trinidad shorts on. And all the guys thought that was really cool that he would wear the Trinidad flag on his shorts and everything. And then they raced and everything was cool. They said, Kirk says he think the guy let Bob win, but Bob ended up winning that.
I didn't know anything about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was a cool story that he said.
There was a young man that Bob got to know on the job, a young Indian boy named Preem Knott.
Mm-hmm. Preem Knott?
Preem Knott.
Wow.
And Bob had told him that he could come back with us to the U.S. And the boy spent quite a bit of time with us. He was very nice and I liked him, but I started worrying about bringing him back here, that it wouldn't work out. So we didn't bring him, and he was really brokenhearted about it.
Oh, he really
I don't know
wanted
whatever
to...
happened to that boy.
Wow, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, the kids knew him because he spent some time with us.
So right then after that, when you guys decided it was time, you moved back to Phoenix in '63, something like that?
That sounds right. And we moved back into our house on
Lawrence
Road.
But that was pretty short before you end up moving to Florida and the Bahamas, 64, 65. Mm-hmm. What do you remember about, how did that go? Did you go Florida, Bahamas? Did you go Bahamas, Florida? Do you remember that?
We moved to Merritt Island, Florida first because there weren't any schools over at Andros, which is the island in the Bahamas where he was working. So he had to live in Florida so the kids could go to school. But as soon as school was out, we moved to Andros in the Bahamas. We had a company house there, kind of a funny little house. And I have to say, I remember my kids, because we moved over in an airplane, we couldn't take any of their toys or anything. Mm-hmm. They made their own Monopoly set, my three
Kirk
kids.
said that.
Yeah.
Kirk said that.
And one of the game where you put your hands and feet down.
Twister.
They
Maybe
made
it was
a Twister,
Joe.
and they made the
They
whole
said,
Monopoly set. I was really impressed.
Because they didn't have any toys, they made their own.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And they made everything for that Monopoly set. It was wonderful.
What do you remember? Do you remember a place called the Harrison House?
The Harrison House was where we stayed when we first went to Andros, and it was a beautiful house. I understand that some of the royal family had owned it or had lived there.
From England?
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
Some of the lesser ones, had lived there, and not the Duke, because I know he lived in the Bahamas, but not there. The Harrison House was beautiful, and we did stay there. When we first got there, I'd forgotten that.
Joe made it sound like it was kind of a popular place. It wasn't just you guys there. There was a lot going on, or
other people stayed there from the company. It was a company house.
Yeah.
That they rented for the company people.
So it must have been pretty, not boring there. There's all kinds of people to hang out with.
And the sailors there was actually a Navy base.
Mm-hmm.
And they were building an undersea downrange. They were building an undersea exploration place, and the sailors we used to eat at the mess hall where the sailors ate, and they were divided into baseball teams that we used to go to the games, and we did a lot with the Navy people.
They were fun?
We had good friends too who were with the Navy.
What else did you guys do with them?
Just mainly the ball games, and
they had like a baseball stadium or field or something out there?
There was a baseball field.
Wow.
And they had movies. We went to movies at the Navy base.
Did you have a maid there?
Yes, we did. Her name
Joe
was
says,
Honey.
There you go. That's what she said.
Yes.
Was she nice? Did you guys like her? Or?
We liked her, and I think she taught Joe to dance. I have pictures of that.
Joe seemed to think that you guys liked
Yes,
her
we
a
liked
lot.
Honey.
And then right after that, eventually you guys moved to Canberra, Australia. And I've got 66. Does that sound right?
Sounds right. I'm not
66.
good with dates like the kids are.
You had to sell the house in Phoenix because you
Yes.
were going to be in Australia for so long, right? And that's when also Dick and Jean Morley moved there with
The
you
same
all.
company.
Same company.
Jean and I went over together with the kids.
And they had some boys, Tom and Troy. Okay. What do you?
I saw Tom. He was here a couple of weeks ago to see me.
Oh, okay. What do you remember about that kind of transition, going from where you were
Well,
to doing that?
We had a lot of Australian friends. Bob was a trap shooter, and we had
He was a what?
trap shooter,
What's that?
skeets
Oh yeah.
with the shotgun.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was really popular in Australia, and we had friends who were also trap shooters that we saw. In fact, they even came over here to see us after.
You guys hung out with the Morleys a lot.
Yes, we did. We had a lot of parties with them and
Played a lot of bridge.
played a lot of bridge. We went to the Outback Hay to a trap shoot.
Just like a contest, a local thing where people would.
And Bob and Dick Morley won that whole thing. They won a car.
What kind of car was it? Do
I
you
can't
remember?
remember, but I remember they sold it and split the money.
Was it brand new?
Mm-hmm.
So it was like a 1960 something.
Yeah. Probably a Ford, I don't know. The company car that Bob had was a Ford.
It was a car, not a truck.
Mm-hmm.
Did they end up buying one already out there? Did they have to bring that all the way over?
Can't remember. Can't remember it. I just remembered that we packed them a lot of shells when they won that trap shoot, Gene and I.
What do you mean by that?
Well, because in order to win that car, they had to shoot and shoot and shoot. And Jean, who is Dick Morley's wife, she's since passed away, we had to keep buying shells and taking them shells.
Because they were just going through them.
Because they were going through so many shells.
All right, let's start a new one. We're gonna